So one thing we were talking about earlier that I think you're asking is that, okay, so even though you don't teach in the peak, you want to be able to give some immediate visual feedback in that moment. So is that right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So if a child throws something, that's a common one, right? So is escalating, is in with other kids, and all of a sudden throws something at somebody's head. And you can't just go, oh, Johnny, let's make sure we calm the storm and then we'll talk about it later. Kind of our instinct as teachers and parents is we need to give some immediate feedback, number one. And we also want to, also part of your question was visuals. So
Right.
the first part that I just want to mention is that it's everybody's natural reaction to say, to stop the behavior and to say something like no biting, no hitting, no kicking, no screaming, no throwing. And I want to value that kids do need that immediate feedback, but make sure that you're saying makes sense to the child. And so you have children at that preschool age who, even if they're typically developing, are not necessarily going to understand negation as well. And what I mean by that is if you say no biting or no hitting, all they hear is the word hitting or biting. And so sometimes you get into a situation where you actually are reinforcing it because you're just labeling it, right, for them, or you're even giving them the idea if they're about to do it and they hadn't thought about it. Anyway, giving an alternative immediately is ideal. So, and of course, visually is great, but it's nice to have something immediately with you. So if you know that a child's going to bite, for example, being able to give them something else to bite is going to be immediate, right? And you can't bite this, but you can bite this, right? So that's one thing. But then so also making sure that when you are actually here, when a child is escalating, is when you're going to bring in visuals for choices. So as I think you mentioned earlier, that I often use the sun diagram in my work, which the sun diagram is really providing a child with choices visually of what they can use when they're feeling frustrated, for example. So they're starting to feel frustrated if that's what is causing the behavior. What are some things that I can offer you right now to help you re-regulate? So it might be a visual of a squeeze, which, a lot of kids really like to have their, just a nice big bear hug kind of thing, which is really going to help them re-regulate. Other kids actually need to leave, right? I need to go be in my own space. So that might be a visual choice. Others might need something to eat. We were talking about that. So really offering visuals in that moment here, again, not at the peak.
So really using that yellow zone, if you will, to say, okay, but this is really, I need to give action. So this is more involvement by me versus me withdrawing and pulling away from the kid. And I can still give visual supports, maybe something concrete, maybe the actual object that they can bite, the thing they can play with, that will help to de-escalate and give them the support. But it's both when I give it and what I give that's clear to the kid what the actual behavior that I'm desiring
is a true option. Yep. So providing options here in that yellow zone, like you said, I wish we could do color here, but we can't right now. But so visual supports here. I would stay away from visual supports here, even during the peak. But I don't think that that's a time where anybody's executive functioning, to use kind of more the brain terminology, but is at its best, meaning that you're being triggered in this moment in addition to the child that you're trying to support. And so it's not a time to bring in visuals. You probably get them thrown at you. Well,
they become a weapon, right? And so, visual supports are there to teach. And if we're saying don't teach, then we're saying don't use visuals here. And we're not also saying, well, just abandon the kid and they will, buck up Cupcake and figure it out and come back.
Now,
how do you help them re-regulate?
So here is just calm through the storm, kind of get to safety. I mean, this is usually when I get questions. My kid is doing this. What should I do? I just got that question this morning, actually. And it's more about, I don't just calm the storm at this point. It doesn't really matter what you do because nobody's thinking is at its best.
Right.
And then really the time to work again is here,
we can use those visual supports again. of
So
where we can go and play and what we could have done differently.
Absolutely. So again, you might have those choices, but in order to go back into that same scenario, you might say, okay, what are you going to use this time when you start feeling that way? And maybe they choose, I'm going to ask for a squeeze. Okay. And then you support them in, okay, let's go back in. And they start to escalate. Okay, remember you said you wanted a squeeze. You show them that visual again, and they use squeeze, and then they're successful. They don't hit the peak. They come back down here, and we're all good, and they've learned something.
So great.